Welcome to my project, which will be on the Southern Ocean Basin. First, I wanted to establish where the Southern Ocean Basin is. It's the area around Antarctica and includes southern parts of the Atlantic, Indian, and Pacific basins. Sort of where those all meet because it sort of joins them together. And I also included the latitude and longitude if anybody cares. Now, just to get some establishing information out of the way, it has a very deep lowest point at 23,737 feet below sea level, but the average depth is only about 6,650 feet. And the only thing you could consider a shoreline is the perimeter of Antarctica and the perimeter of all the small islands that are around it. And therefore, the tides in general remain pretty unimpeded because there's no land to inhibit them, so they function differently than they do in other parts of the world where there's lots of land mass to affect the tides. The main current that affects the Southern Ocean Basin is the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, otherwise known as the ACC. It is very powerful and it flows eastward, which means east to west around Antarctica, at about 150 billion liters per second, which is really, really strong and fast. And those flows occur at mid-depth. Now, as those really strong, fast currents move, it's also extremely cold, with temperature ranging from about -2 degrees Celsius to 10 degrees Celsius, which does make it the coldest and windiest ocean about. It's also covered in a 1 to 2 meter layer of ice for large stretches, so that can be 6 feet in some places. And the biggest risk that climate change poses is the melting of that ice, but also because there's so much carbon stored in this part of the ocean, it's really possible that it could be acidified and have all these other negative effects that we learned about on the ocean. And here is a bathymetric diagram which shows you how deep the water is within the basin. As you can see, the lighter blues indicate that it is more shallow, and therefore the areas right around the perimeter of the continent are lighter as the water gets deeper as you move away. As for plate boundaries, you're going to want to focus on this bottom line that runs across, as there wasn't any really pictures of the sort of bottom view of the Earth looking at the South Pole like the other photos are. I think this one's better at showing you exactly where the plates run, which form the basin, because the basin actually dips into the Indian and Pacific and Atlantic. I think this is the best way to see just how what's labeled austral, which is the, for our purposes, southern basin. And as you can see, it sort of comes into the Indian and Atlantic and Pacific and sort of all forms together the whole basin. Now, you may have guessed this, but there's not a ton of reason to venture this far south in the world, just in general, because it is so cold, the water is so turbulent, it is so dangerous, and there's not many natural resources there. The only thing that, well, Antarctica is the only thing in the entire basin, and the only reason you'd want to go there is to have some valuable metals like iron, and sometimes there's a little bit of coal down there too, but it's really not worth the risk in general. So it's very rare that anybody but scientific researchers go there. So there's not really any historic shipwrecks that I could find, because there's no reason for any big ships to sail there. The reward is just too low. And thank you for listening, and that's all.